Welcome inside the Mountain West Network studio. We're getting you primed for Week 13 in the Mountain West football season. Brought in our football analyst, Ted Sundquist, to talk about the upcoming games. 4 teams already bowl eligible in the Mountain West. 3 teams with a win could become bowl eligible this week, so some postseason opportunities out there for the teams in the Mountain West. Let's get started with a couple of weekday games. First, a Thursday night game, UNLV at Air Force. Air Force 2-8 on the season, 0-6 inside the Mountain West Conference. UNLV 5-5. 3-3 inside the Mountain West Conference. Both of these teams coming off of bye weeks. Air Force has passed the ball a whole lot more lately than they really have in the past. Nate Romine attempted 23 passes at New Mexico. Is this a trend that should continue for the Falcons?
Jesse, I really think so. I think Troy Calhoun would like to be more balanced, and I think it gives him some flexibility to his overall attack. But with the turnover at the quarterback position this year, it's really been difficult. Now that Romine appears to be the quarterback to finish out the season, having the ability to back off 8 or 9 men in the box will open up the run game a bit and perhaps give the Falcons some big play opportunities that they've been lacking here in 2013. Air Force is currently last in the Mountain West in long plays from the line of scrimmage.
UNLV has a chance to make school history this week if Tim Cornette rushes for 30 yards and Devontae Davis has 52 yards receiving. Be the first time in school history they've had a 1,000-yard rusher and a 1,000-yard receiver in the same season. Kind of speaks to the balance that the Rebels have achieved on offense this year.
It really does. Those two players have been extremely productive, but I think that's attributable to the play of Caleb Herring at quarterback. One sign of an effective signal caller is his ability to raise the level of play of those around him. Herring's 63% completion percentage is the highest for the Rebel offense in years, and his 197 yards rushing is the most since Omar Clayton's 238 in 2009. That dual threat by Herring puts pressure on opponent defenses and opens things up for players like Cornette and Davis. It's been a great team effort by UNLV on the offensive side this season.
The Rebels are 2-2 coming off of byes under Bobby Hauck, including a win over Hawaii earlier this year. Kickoff will be Thursday, 7:30 p.m. from Falcon Stadium, be televised by ESPNU. Moving on to Navy at San Jose State, another weekday game that'll be played on Friday night. San Jose State, they're 5-5, 4-3 in the Mountain West. They lost to Nevada 38-16. Last year, this is a game that the Spartans dominated, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They shut out the Mids 12-0, first shutout since 2013 for San Jose State. What is the secret for them to stop the Mids this year the way they did last year?
No doubt in my mind it's going to be putting pressure on Navy quarterback Keenan Reynolds. He leads the team with 884 yards rushing, 19 touchdowns. He's averaging 9.1 passing per throw with 7 touchdowns as well. San Jose will have to give Reynolds some different looks up front while being disciplined on defense with their option assignments. String out that Navy offense from number 1 to number 2 to the third ball carrier, and they must tackle well one-on-one. Navy will want to reduce you down to one-on-one matchups, and the safeties for the Spartans will need to be at their best that they've been this season.
San Jose State seeking back-to-back winning seasons for the first time since 1986-1987. Friday night kickoff, 6:30 Pacific time for the Mids and the Spartans. That'll be televised by ESPN2 at 6:30. How about Hawaii at Wyoming? Hawaii still winless, 0-10 overall, 0-7 in the Mountain West Conference. They're coming off the loss to San Diego State. Wyoming is 4-6 overall, 2-4 inside the Mountain West Conference. They lost to Boise State rather big. Wyoming's offense scored 34 or more points in 6 of their first 8 games this season. They've scored a combined 17 points in the last 2 games. How do they get back on track offensively against the Rainbow Warriors?
Well, you mentioned the Cowboys have lost 4 in a row, and in all 4 games, they've been on the minus side of the turnover margin. 11 turnovers total in the last 4. Wyoming has got to do a better job of taking care of the football and not giving the Rainbow Warriors any short field opportunities. Also, I think the Cowboys must get back to running the football effectively. The past 2 games have tallied 2 of their lowest 3 efforts on the year via the ground game. That won't necessarily be an easy assignment against Hawaii's defense that's been fairly stingy against the run this season.
Speaking of against the run, we touched on this briefly last week. Joey Iosefa, Hawaii running back, has really hit his stride lately. He's had back-to-back games of 35 or more carries, going for 150 and 190 yards. First player to go back-to-back 100-yard games in 3 years. They'll need this sort of ground game in Laramie, given the variance of conditions that really can play into game day.
Yeah, Jesse, you're correct. And since the midway mark of the season, this ability to run the football has kept things a little bit closer for Norm Chow's offense. On the road against UNLV and Navy, the Rainbow Warriors averaged well over 4 yards per attempt and fell only 2 to the Rebels, and were down by 7 late in the fourth quarter against the Midshipmen. Laramie, late in November, as you spoke about, we both know this, can get pretty windy. And the best way to control Brett Smith and company, I think, is to keep them over on the sideline and control that clock.
Cowboys and Rainbow Warriors will kick things off 12 o'clock Mountain Time. It'll be televised by Oceanic Pay-Per-View and also streamed live on the Mountain West Network. Moving on to Colorado State at Utah State. Colorado State 6-5. 4-2 inside the Mountain West Conference. They beat New Mexico. Utah State was idle. They're 6-4. Colorado State needs to get to 7 wins to become bowl eligible because they play 13 games. Capri Bibbs rushed for 291 yards after going for 312.
A little off his game.
Jeez, 2 top rushing games inside the conference for Mr. Bibbs. He gets a ton of credit, and we gave him a ton of credit last week. Let's talk about the guys up front that are paving the way for them. The Rams have, on their 2 deep, 4 seniors up front and 1 junior. We all know that a running back is only as good as his offensive line, and the Rams' offensive line lately has been outstanding.
Yeah, one of the best in college football. Anchored by Winston Richburg at center, this group's got 149 starts to their credit. You know, when you go to the doctor and there are certain vitals they look for to determine your health, well, a stable and healthy offensive line is a sign of a good football team. They're second in average yards per rush. They're third in sacks allowed, though Air Force doesn't really pass enough to really garner consideration as the number 1. These guys are big, they're tough, they'll take over a game as it wears on. The Rams have averaged 5.96 per rush and have scored 18 touchdowns in the second half of their games this season.
I know Capri Bibbs' mom probably very thankful for the big fellas he has up front blocking for him. Let's move on to Utah State. They've won 3 in a row. Defensively, the Aggies are giving up 15 points per game and holding their opponents to under 340 yards total. Matt Wells has some toughness, and he has a nasty team on defense in a good way.
Yeah, this is going to be a big test for CSU as the Aggies lead the Mountain West. And get this, opponent big plays from the line of scrimmage. CSU was first in big plays of 20-plus or more. Opponent third down conversion. Total defense, CSU's averaging 472 yards per game. Scoring defense, the Rams are averaging 36 per game. Second in takeaways, so it's going to be one of those, something's got to give type games. That Aggie defense and this CSU offense, with the way they've been playing, it's going to make for an exciting football game.
Strength versus strength, no doubt about that. Utah State is bowl eligible for a 3rd straight season. The Rams with a chance to become bowl eligible with a win. So plenty on the line in Logan, Utah. Kickoff 1:30 Mountain Time, be televised by CBS Sports Network. Moving on to New Mexico at Fresno State. The Bulldogs, number 15 in the latest BCS rankings. New Mexico 3-7. Overall 1-5 inside the Mountain West Conference. Fresno State still undefeated, 9-0, 6-0 inside the Mountain West. They were idle. New Mexico going to play the rest of the way, looks like, without their starting quarterback, Cole Gauchi, who is suffering from concussion-like symptoms. How does this affect the Lobos' option attack?
Well, the Lobos lead the Mountain West in rushing, and they're second in the nation in overall rushing. Gauchi is second on the team in rushing yards with 777. He averaged close to 12 carries a game, second only to leading rusher Casey Carrier. Backup quarterback junior Clayton Mitchum has 40 attempts, only 44 yards. Trying to keep up with the explosive Bulldog offense will be a chore, and so much of that triple option attack is the smooth rhythm, the reading ability, and the productive pressure from the quarterback position. No doubt New Mexico will miss this vital piece of their rushing attack.
No doubt they would love to play spoiler. Fresno State receiving the national attention in the BCS polls, one of 5 teams in the country, still unbeaten. How does Tim DeRuyter navigate this tricky road? You love the attention, but also that comes with a negative side if you allow it to get inside the locker room and they start believing that hype. How do they temper that down the stretch?
Well, Tim has stressed all year long about winning this week, not looking ahead. Fresno State has been in enough close ball games to realize that nothing is guaranteed. They've got 2 wins by just a single point. New Mexico's offense has held up its side of the bargain this season, averaging 35 points per game. So Tim knows the challenge his team is facing as a defensive-oriented coach. But the Bulldogs have been resilient all season long. They show good focus in the face of tough situations. I think they understand the significance of what's ahead without taking their eyes off the present.
talk about that efficiency of the Lobo offense. They have not punted now in 2 straight games. The punter's a lonely man over on the sideline. Those games against Air Force and Colorado State. Kickoff between the Lobos and the Bulldogs, 1 o'clock Pacific time. That'll be televised by ESPN News. Moving on to Boise State at San Diego State. This one's going to be a good one. The Broncos 7-3 overall, 5-1 in Mountain West Conference play. They beat Wyoming. San Diego State 6-4, 5-1 inside the Mountain West. They come off a victory over Hawai'i. News out of Boise is Joe Southwick starting to take reps during practice. He had the ankle injury. Grant Hedrick still expected to start this game. Great news for the Broncos that Southwick is on the mend. But how do you navigate this if you're Coach Pete? Because you have your senior leader in Joe Southwick that everyone rallies behind, but Grant Hedrick certainly has been playing very well recently. How would you handle this situation when you got 2 quarterbacks that really think that they should be playing?
Yeah, Jesse, you hit the nail on the head, and it's tough with Southwick being the senior, and effectively this was his football team. But to interrupt the continuity at quarterback that has led to 3 wins over the last 4 games, and on the road against a very hot Aztec team that's won 6 of their last 7, I wouldn't do it. I'd go with Hedrick and rely on the veteran leadership of Southwick if needed in a late comeback effort. It's sort of like a former starter, kind of bringing him in as your closer in baseball. I think Southwick could serve that role well as he continues to show that he's healthy.
No doubt Boise State still playing for a spot in the Mountain West Championship game. San Diego State was the only team inside the Mountain West to beat the Broncos last year. They did it in a thriller, 21-19. Aztecs are playing great football right now. They've won 3 in a row, 6 of their last 7. How do they get it done for a 2nd straight year against the Broncos?
Well, I think you look at the formula this year and some of the losses that the Broncos have had. They limited big plays via the pass. The Broncos struggled versus Washington and BYU this year. And last year, the Aztecs held them to their lowest per catch average at just 8 yards. Win the turnover battle. The Broncos are -6 in those 3 losses they've had in 2013, but +6 in their 7 victories. And then last year, the Aztec defense was fantastic on first down, and they forced the Broncos in numerous 2nd and long situations, really keeping them off schedule for much of the game. 3 3-and-outs, 5 total punts, and an interception. So I think that's the key to them coming out on top again this year.
San Diego State bowl eligible for a 4th straight season after going 11 years without a postseason appearance. So a great job by Rocky Long and company getting the troops rallied and getting the season right, and they're likely going to be right back in a bowl game. Kickoff 7:30 Pacific time. That'll be televised by CBS Sports Network. Could be an exciting week for Mountain West teams. By the end of the weekend, could be 7 teams bowl eligible in the Mountain West.
Looking forward to it.
For Ted Sundquist, I'm Jesse Kurtz. Thanks for logging on to the Mountain West Network.